Hello, my name is Dr. Sonika Sethi, and I'm an internal medicine trainee in West Midlands and an incoming ACF gastroenterology trainee in Imperial College. I'm excited to share with you in IBD Club a therapeutic drug monitoring meta-analysis that I've had the pleasure of being first author of and was published this year in APT&T. So what is therapeutic drug monitoring? So therapeutic drug monitoring has been utilized since 1960s, and it's most commonly used for anti-TNF alpha drugs with the aim of optimizing its use. It measures specific drug levels and guides clinicians to optimize the outcomes of the drug, either by increasing the frequency of administration or increasing the dose. This has helped to provide a treat-to-target approach and a personalized medicine approach, allowing us to see benefits in clinical and endoscopic remission in the management of IBD. There are two types. So proactive TDM is when drug levels are measured at preset time points, whereas reactive TDM is when drug levels are measured when there's a clinical change. And different trusts tend to use different approaches. But there's conflicting use regarding the use of TDM, and the literature has also reflected this. So previous trials have failed to show improvement in the remission in clinical and endoscopic remission, and even previous meta-analyses done by Shah et al. In 2020 showed that the use of reactive TDM in adults is limited and of very low quality. There have now since been more studies that are focusing more on proactive TDM rather than reactive TDM, but the guidelines haven't managed to keep up with that. They're also very conflicting. The BSG guidelines advise that whilst TDM can be used for dose optimization, it is not recommended for the routine monitoring of patients. NICE guidelines do not suggest the routine use of TDM, and that might be related to the high costs related to the assays. In terms of the AGA Association guidelines, they do advocate the use of reactive TDM, but explain that this is based on very low quality evidence. And the ECHO guidelines also say there's insufficient evidence to recommend the use of TDM. So currently the guidelines are very conflicting on this. Now, our aim of the meta-analysis was to look at various clinical outcomes to see whether there was efficacy in using TDM. So our primary aim focused on clinical remission and response, and our secondary aims focused on treatment failure, need for surgical interventions, endoscopic remission, need for hospitalization, and corticosteroid-free remission. And we compared reactive and proactive in our secondary outcomes, whilst our primary outcomes more focused on proactive TDM versus standard of care. So in our Prisma diagram, we searched various databases, including Medline, Embase, PubMed, and we included not just randomized controlled trials, but prospective and retrospective cohort studies. And we focused on an adult population, where we only included an adult population study where at least 90% of subjects were over 16 years old. So as you can see, we started with a very large number of records, and then we did bring them down using the Ray and Webb tool, and ended up having 22 papers in our review and 4 abstracts. So this led us to 26 studies in total, 9 of which were randomized controlled trials, 4 prospective cohort studies, 11 retrospective cohort studies, 2 that were both prospective and retrospective. And then we categorized these studies also based on the outcomes that they concluded with. So in terms of our results, so the significant results are those that are in bold. So when we compared proactive TDM versus standard of care in terms of treatment failure, there was a significant difference favoring proactive TDM. And likewise, when we compared proactive TDM with reactive TDM on treatment failure, there was again another favoring of proactive. And as you can see, there's quite a range of studies that show that favoring. Clinical remission did not have significant results. Then proactive TDM versus standard of care in surgical intervention, again, favored proactive TDM. There wasn't any significant results that we found in terms of proactive versus reactive TDM for surgical intervention, and in terms of proactive TDM versus reactive TDM in steroid-free remission, we did not see any significant result with that either. Then another significant result was that proactive TDM versus reactive TDM on the need for hospitalization was a significant result, which favored proactive TDM. And there was no significant result found in terms of endoscopic remission and in terms of practical TDM versus standard of care in the need for hospital admission. So in terms of the positive significant outcomes that our study found, were all mostly favoring proactive TDM. So when you compare standard of care versus proactive TDM, there were significant benefits found in reducing treatment failure, in terms of surgical rates, and in terms of improved endoscopic remission and response. In terms of reactive TDM, proactive TDM led to a significant reduction in hospitalization and of treatment failure. We do appreciate that there are limitations of TDM that will need to be worked on. So even though our meta-analysis shows positive results in terms of the efficacy of TDM, we appreciate that there are new challenges that clinicians will need to work on and trust as well. So the use of that tool requires expert knowledge, a multidisciplinary team approach, which can vary between different hospital departments itself. Those clinicians with great experience tend to use TDM. And we find that the results of TDM are unlikely to be instantaneous due to unavoidable delays made by the patient, getting their bloods done, clinicians checking those results, and then the lab processing these results. So these delays can sometimes make it too late for those changes to have a clinical effect and have that action that they need to intend to have. A way of kind of overcoming that could be these new point of care tests that are trying to be developed for TDM and assays for that. So the next step is to consider, standardizing assays, which can help to improve the accuracy and the generalizability of TDM. There might be also a focus on newer biologics. Now we're seeing ustekinumab, vedolizumab, or tofacitinib, and thinking about exploring the cost effectiveness of TDM. And ultimately, we need larger, more inclusive randomized controlled trials to really accurately determine the yield of TDM. So that concludes my presentation. I hope you enjoyed our presentation regarding therapeutic drug monitoring in inflammatory bowel disease. Thank you.